I'm generally more motivated by like big aspirational missions, purpose, goals. I think the most commonly used kind of in the business context is the BHAG, Big Hairy Audacious Goals by Jim Collins, which I would, in my words, kind of define as like the more long-term, bold, aspirational, emotionally compelling type of goals, more of a vision, not necessarily a very quantified goal. I think there are variations that we can explore there. But overall, what it tends to do is it anchors a team. It kind of creates this sense of belonging. We're all striving to this North Star, kind of creates a proactive mindset instead of a reactive mindset. Drives innovation, focus, clarity. If done well, I think it also allows for resiliency during times of change or uncertainty. But that is already kind of getting into the territory of like, in my view, those big goals should be related more to your why than to your how, because then it can start to feel too limiting.
That distinction. Yeah.
But looking at kind of the stats that we see of like, what does this do? Research provided by Business Insights was that, let me get this straight. People in companies that have a big, hairy, audacious goal that people generally believe in are 6 to 7 times more proud of where they work. So it brings this kind of belonging, pride, and then on top of that, they are 14 times more likely to be inspired. So that's the other thing. It brings this inspiration. But I can also already hear the contesters or the people that might prefer more of like the small incremental goals, that it feels like too lofty, like a pipe dream. It's you can never accomplish it, or it's too far away, so it takes a long time to get there. So you never really celebrate or focus on those positive wins. So it can be demoralizing. Or how often have you seen people roll their eyes with some big statement on a wall, right? So I can see how it doesn't work for everyone, and can see kind of the counter side of it too. One other dimension that I want to throw in there, because I think it all still really depends on how well you set a goal like that. So there's also something in and thinking of Simon Sinek's book around finite versus infinite game. When you think of Nike in the early days, their mission or their goal was to just beat Adidas.
Yeah.
Which I think is another avenue that we could explore. Like, would you ever set such a like competitive, comparative goal? But the reason I took it is that it's finite. It's like, okay, once you've accomplished that, then now what? So
It's
how?
a yes or no. We did or we
yes
didn't.
or no. How big is it really? It was in Nike's early days, so maybe there's something to explore there around like maturity of organizations. But it has, I think, as most people would know, transitioned into a mission to bring inspiration and innovation to all athletes around the world. And that, to me, is an example of a great one. And if you take the 5 criteria that Simon Sinek has in his Infinite Game book around like what this big visionary goal should look like, it should be something that you stand for, or reflects what you stand for, that everybody in the company can contribute to, that has a positive benefit on others, allows for resiliency, so like some sort of change within how you get to it, and it needs to be idealistic. So maybe even something that you would never truly accomplish. Like, would Nike ever reach every athlete in the world?
Right.
Maybe. It's also hard to
idealistic,
hard to
aspirational.
quantify. So, but it is, I think, motivational.
I like that.
So this was my pitch for big, hairy, audacious goals.
You don't have to pitch me on it. You've been living it. I've worked with you long enough that I know you like that. But I do kind of liken it to a bit of, not to oversimplify it, but it's like climbing, and maybe this is a relevant example for you, like Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest, right? You have that summit. You have that big, hairy, audacious goal for yourself that I want to summit that mountain.
Yeah, reach the
one
top.
of the largest mountains or the largest one in the world, get to the top, before I'm 40 or something like that. So I can get that summit becomes just get to the top, and becomes your big HAG or that BHAG, sorry, or, that big visionary, aspirational, maybe idealistic goal for some people.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. But then the question for me is, how do you know you're making your way towards there? But I will hold on that because this is where our debate comes in. But it's good for people to think to themselves, I guess, of like, what's your summit in life, in work, with your team, on a day? How do you translate that equivalent to yourself? What's your summit?
Yeah.
And then some other ones. So you mentioned Nike. The other ones that kind of come to mind, and, my Toronto is showing here and my love for sports is showing here. But I think of when Masai Ujiri became the president of the Raptors. Oh, now my dates, 2013, maybe around there. His thing it was, and he very clearly said at the press conference, I'm here to bring a championship. To Toronto. Right. And the Raptors had been around since the late 90s at this point. So it's kind of like, okay, they're still a young franchise. Is this possible? And by golly, like they slowly build, and he made some tough decisions to get there. But that was their BHAG. But on a smaller scale, I think of in teams I've been a part of, our leaders have tried to create our own version of a BHAG. That's our like North Star, our rallying cry that brings us all together. And when I was on a sales team, it was, we are going to be the team that X% growth. That was kind of like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, no, we've been saying, but we are going to do it, and got everybody bought in on the why behind it. And I was like, okay, that's what we're doing this year. Or when I was in a customer service team, it was, we are going to be like beat the industry standard on NPS scores for our industry. And it was like, okay, like we're small fish, and you could, again, this eye roll test that started to happen, but those like BHAGs in a departmental or a team level start to emerge. But I think your comment before too, as I'm like kind of unpacking that a little bit, of people's styles, right? And I tease you and I joke that of course you gravitate towards these, but I think there's something in your preferences. And we've talked about the DISC assessment that identifies the 4 different preferences people lean towards. And I wouldn't be surprised that yourself being a D style, so the dominant style of ambitious in nature, maybe competitive, like wants to push to that next and keep going and what's possible, let's figure it out, would lean towards be more motivated, right? And I mean, I'm in I style, so the influence style. So I do like those, but it's less of the challenge of the BHAG and it's more the challenge of rallying a group around of like, okay, we have this group of people. This is what their strengths are. This is what their experiences are. This is how we've got to this place. Like, how can I rally? What's that connective tissue that's really going to motivate them and keep that alive?
Yeah, I can see that. And you mentioned something there that triggered something for me in terms of like, what are some of those tools to get to a good goal? And it was the sales goal that you mentioned, which is this concept of the moonshot question, right? Instead of looking for how can we increase by 10%, sure, people will be motivated by that, will probably get you there. They will come up with small kind of incremental changes that you can apply. But then what a moonshot question would do is like take it from like, what if it's not 10%, but 10 times what we're doing today? That will immediately kind of change the thinking, drive innovation. Like it will just make you think differently because you have to do something completely different than you had done until that day. So that moonshot question, I think, is something that's very tangible to kind of help you set a a big, hairy, audacious goal. Another concept that I was thinking about is, and I love a good Venn diagram, it's the hedgehog concept where you kind of map the thing that you're deeply passionate about with the thing that you can really be the best at, and then something that's kind of financially sustainable, right? Like the economic driver, and then that sweet spot in the middle. That's probably where you need to go look for defining that aspirational goal. And then closer to home, if I look at what we do at Sidekick, because spoiler alert, I think we have we know we have a combination of different personas and preferences on our team, and we're doing a bit of both, right? We're finding the balance between big and audacious and incremental goals. But we've been using entrepreneurial operating system and their vision and traction organizer to define both our purpose, which is a bit more like lofty, aspirational, as you know, but also a 10-year vision, which often is a bit more quantified. So it could be that like 10x type of quantified goal. And then we have started to develop a bit of our own framework that actually, now that I think of it, is pretty similar to that hedgehog concept, but is balancing 4 Ps. So purpose, passion, people, and profit. And I think every goal as an organization that you said should aim for the right balance across that. So just kind of some tangible tools to kind of help think about what it could be for you as a person, for you in your department, for you in your organization. Because it, I think to your point, also exists at various different levels.
So the tools being the moonshot question, like that 10x, this hedgehog concept that I think is also Jim Collins' piece.
Yep.
And then the entrepreneurial operating system, like what's that vision, purpose, 10-year target that feels a bit out of reach. Cool.